happened in the previous webinar actually, to get everyone on the same pace and on the same scale. So we saw that what is Remix ID. About this, we are actually going to see this again because Remix ID is actually the platform where we develop, and then we saw what are the data types in Solidity, and then we finish our lecture with the function. So if you have missed the previous webinar, do not worry because these three things are also the things that we are going to use today as well. So uh, I, I, I would like to give you a little bit of more about the Remix ID, and you don't need to worry about anything. So Remix ID, where ID stands for Integrated Development Environment. So it is basically like the platform which is used to write smart contracts and Solidity. And if you have some prior knowledge, then you might know about VS Code. It's similar to that, but in this you can only write Solidity languages, and the main thing is that it helps in deployment, debug, and administrator of the smart contract. So it's a great hands-on ID, and for anyone beginners out there, it is mostly told to use this ID for the first time because it gives you a good overview. And now let's check that what are the data types in Solidity. So there are actually two types of the data types. One is value type, and the second one is reference type. So we covered some of the value types in the last webinar, which were uint, boolean, address, and they are the basic one. So and we are going to use that today as well. So do not worry. We'll see that again in this webinar. And about the reference type, it contains dynamic arrays, structure. So we are going to cover these all separately in the future webinars. So yeah, pretty much you haven't missed anything. So let's start with today's webinar. So what are the different types of variables in Solidity? Now before seeing what are the different type of variables, let's understand what are actually variables. So a variable is basically a placeholder for the data which can be manipulated at runtime. Good. Now variables allow users to retrieve and change the stored information, right? And there are three kinds of variables in Solidity, which are state variable, local variable, and global variable. Now let's see one by one each of them. Coming to the state variable. So in Solidity, the state variables are declared inside a contract, but outside the function. Remember in the previous webinar we made our first smart contract that was on the hello world. In that contract we wrote the variable outside it and there were no functions. So that was actually what a state variable. So now the state variables are stored permanently on the contract storage of the Ethereum blockchain. You need to remember this line that it stores permanently on the contract storage of the Ethereum blockchain. So, and since it uses contract storage, we have to pay the gas fees to use the state variables. Hence, we should be more careful to use a number of state variables in the contract because more the state variables, the more the gas fees will be applicable. Now, if you don't know what are the gas fees, then the gas fees are actually the real money which you cost while making the transactions, but that only happens when you are deploying on the mainnet. And but for the sake of our webinars, we are going to do it on the testnet, so you don't need to worry about just creating two or three state variable. Create as much as you want because they are the testnet. Now let's see what are the scope of the state variable. So generally speaking, state variables, there are three scope, that is public, internal, and private. Now let's see one by one. So the public is the state variables are available for any external call. The getter function is implicitly created by the compiler to read its value. What is a getter function? Getter function is a small function that we see on the remix ID, which I'll show you in a minute. Now, what are the internal? So the state variables are not accessible from any external calls. In this, they can be accessed only from within the contract or from the contract that are deriving it. If not specified, the default scope of the state variable is what? Internal, right? And the last is what? Private. The state variables that are neither accessible from any external calls nor from any other child contexts that are deriving it are known as the private state variables, and they are only accessible from the functions inside the contract. Now let's see what an example of the state variable. So here you can see the example of the state variable, on which the string public statement, it's a state variable. Because why? Because it is not declared in a function. We are going to create one ahead in our practical portion, so do not need to worry. But just to show and to get a more virtual view, we are showing here the example. And similarly, you can see I've defined one, two, three, four, five state variables, and one of them is private also, and two of them is private also. So that's the stuff that you can create as much as state variables you want, but they need to be outside the function, right? Now let's see what are the local variables. If you remember, there are three kinds of state variables in the Solidity. First is state, second is local, and the last is global. Now what is local? We are on to the local variable portion. So in the Solidity, the local variables are those variables that are defined inside the functions. The scope of the local variables is within the function only, and it is stored in the memory, due to which it is not permanently persistent. Uh, I'll repeat it again. The scope of the local variables is within the function only, and it is stored in the memory, due to which it is not permanently persistent. Now, since they are not stored on the Ethereum blockchain, can you guess what it does? It does not incur what? Gas fees, right? By now you have understood that why it does not incur gas fees, because they are not permanently stored. They are stored in the memory. Consider them as, you can say, RAM. And generally the local variables are used inside the function for holding the values for some calculation purposes, whereas state variables, you are going to declare them to store some values permanent. Like if you I want to store, uh, if I'm making a smart contract for employee, so I want to store the employee number permanently, then I'll declare it as the state variable. But that employee number can be changed, so I can not declare that as a local variable, right? Now let's see what is the scope of the local variables. So the local variables are only visible inside the function in which it is declared. It cannot be accessed by any other external function or contract. So you can say that a local variable uh, is only for the specific function in which it is declared for, and the values of these variables are present till the function executes, and it cannot be accessed outside the function. So this type of variable is usually used to store what? Temporary values that I've already explained earlier. Now let's see an example of of a local variable. So here you can see that there is the amount, unit amount. It is a local variable because it is declared inside the function, and there are no state variables out here. So if there was some state variable here, then it would have been declared somewhere related to, wait, I'll write and show, it will be better. So something would have been like event, let's say public, and amount. If that was the case, then it was a state variable, not a local variable. So now, since it is defined under this contract, it is a local variable, and you cannot access basically outside this function. So let's say if I make a function outside of this, now how will I understand that I'm outside of the function? We understand by these braces. Now, if I'm writing something below this line, then I'm outside this function. And if I'm writing any function here, and uh, I'm trying to make anything, and I want to access the variable amount, which is right now locally declared. So I won't be able to access, because why? This amount can be only used inside the function calculate. So that's the point. I hope you get it. Now let's move forward. Just a minute. Okay. So global variable. Now, this is the third part of our of the variables in the Solidity. So in Solidity, there are some special global variables available that give details about the Ethereum blockchain and transactions that are happening on it. Now, note, we cannot declare a global variable. A global variable is already predefined, and there are some of the examples of the global variable that I will show you ahead, and which looks something like this. For example, there are certain global variables which are, let's say, block hash. So block hash gives the hash of the given block when block number is one of the 256 recent blocks. And similar to this is message.handler. It gives you the address of the caller. So it is one of the most widely used, you can say. So you are going to use this mostly, and actually you are going to use any of these, and you don't necessarily need to remember these. You can just go to the Solidity doc and just go and see from here, because you don't need to remember them. And as the time will proceed, you will be automatically remembering them, so don't give your time an hour and waste it to remember this. So, and one of the most widely used also is block dot timestamp. So it gives you the current block timestamp as in the Unix timestamp. So what is the Unix timestamp? It is actually the Unix version of the timestamp. So I'll show you this right now as well. Okay, so I think so. Let's move on to our practical portion, because it's too much story is hard to get, and I believe in practical. So let's go to the practical portion. Okay, so yeah, so for those of you who are coming for the first time, this is a Remix IDE in which you can create your workspaces, you can create a folders. It gives you various things, like you can compile your contract. You want to deploy a contract, then you can also deploy that contract. We covered everything in the previous webinar, and as we are going to proceed in this webinar, most of the widely things are going to be covered as well. So you don't need to worry about that. Now let's see. So we made this function in our last webinar, and can you guess which kind of variable is this? I'll give you 3 seconds to guess. One, two, three. It is what? A state variable. Now why it is a state variable? Because there are no functions, right? And since there are no functions and it is declared outside of a function, it is a state variable. And can you guess in which storage it is going to be stored? Storage, it is going to be stored. It is going to be stored in the blockchain. Now if I deploy this contract and if I change this, then it's going to be change. Like for the different blockchain, it is going to be a different value, but for this blockchain I've deployed this, it is not going to change, and hence it is stored in the blockchain permanently. This is where the property of immutability mostly comes for the blockchain. Like you cannot alterate anything. So these are the things. So why don't we go and deploy it and understand it more betterly? So let's go here, and when we click here deploy, it deploys the hello world contract, that is this contract. And when we click on the deploy, it deploys our contract. And how do you know it is deployed? When you get a good green tick here, which we developers really like, because uh, there is a real happiness of getting thing deployed. And here you can check the status. This is a transaction hash that is going to be very unique for that is going to be unique for this smart contract. And yes, it is. And then you can also see the gas fees which was cost while deploying this. So these are the stuffs. And if you want to interact with the contract, you can come here and you can see there's a cute little button say statement. So this is what, as I've explained one of the slide, it's in nothing but a what getter function. Getter function. So when you create public, when you give it the public visibility, it creates a getter function like this. And why do you create a getter function? To basically just interact with the blockchain, because you need to test, you need to see what is happening, and you need to interact, because once deployed on the mainnet, all of the things are going to be permanently stored. So it's better to interact with the blockchain beforehand, and that's why I've created it a public. And now when I'll click on statement, can you guess what it will show? It will show hello world, right? Now let's see and try to change something here and see what will happen next. So let's say we name a variable something else. So since it's FIFA time, let's name it CR7. And in the statement and in the value, I'll pass. Okay. So if you don't know, this is one thing that Cristiano Ronaldo mostly says. And now when you deploy this, you'll remember you still see a statement here, which was for the earlier contract. However, you also see CR7. Why this is happening? Because they are defined as a state variable, and when you change this, the contract changes and it deploys on a different blockchain. So yeah, so you see Sue here and hello world on this contract. Now how many times you call it, no matter what, you are always going to see hello world. You won't ever see it comes Su here or is or CR7 here. So yeah, that's pretty much about the state variable. Now let's go, and now I've deleted the contract if you have been wondering, by the way, and we'll go on to our workspace again, and we'll create a new folder by the name. Okay, we don't want to create a new folder here, so we'll let's create a new file by the name uh, local local variables. Now since I've created local variables here, I can see the local variable file coming here, and this yellow thing is just a warning, and it will be removed once you write this line spdx license identifier. Basically we need to provide it a license that we are going to use, so we are going to use MIT license in this. And if you're wondering that what license you want to use for your programs, then you can write I mean there are tons and several licenses available. You can go and check from there, and mostly MIT or unlicensed will also be I mean you can also use unlicensed or MIT, so it is going to be applicable for most of the programs. Now let's create a contract. I'm going to create a contract with the name. Check the name, that is local variables. Now why I'm writing this? Because it's a good practice to always give your contract same name as the file name. Because yeah, I mean if other developers want to contribute to your contract, then they will be easily doing that. Now let's see and try to create some more state variables, right? So just earlier I've told you to create a state variable, and we'll create again. So this is uint public, and we'll give it a name. Let's say age is equal to 25. Okay, cool. Now let's create a function, and really I don't know what to do, so I'm just writing anything, any random function. So I'll give it, let's say add, and I'll give it two parameters, uint x, uint y, and we'll check if you want to return the value or not. So we'll also returns it, and then if you want to write return, then you uh, so if you are from any earlier programming language, then you might see that we are writing returns here. So in Solidity, when you are declaring inside a function, you write returns, and when you're returning the value from inside the function, you write return. So while writing the function signature, you write return, and when you are returning the value, you write return. Clear? We write uint 256. Now there are two things that I've written here. One is uint and one is uint 256. Are they different? Absolutely not. They're not different. They are just similar to, I can write them uint 256 as well. So they are just similar to uint 256. However, if I write uint 8 here, then this is going to be a different thing. So when you write uint, it is just similar to uint 256. So for the better sake of understanding, we'll pass uint 256 here. And if you don't know, uint is unsigned integer, which only allows user to input a positive value. Now let's give it some value. So let's say age is equal to x, and let's say uint, I've written unit uint 256. I'm giving it a value, different value, uint 256. Uh, let's say I'm giving it some value age, and I'm writing now age is equal to y, and let's see and return age. So yeah, we like here aged, return age and aged. Okay. So yeah, so this is what program, and we have created a smart contract. Now let's see that what errors we are getting here, so that we go and we change them, right? Because I've told in the earlier classes that more errors we see, the more we will understand. So now it is saying that I've declared age here, but I've written aged here. So why not we go and change age to aged here, right? Now, here it is saying undeclared identifier. Did you mean aged or age? So it is taking aged. Now, why it is doing this? Can you tell? Okay. So, since you are going to make it a local variable, then it is undeclared and hence it won't be used. So, yeah. So I guess you got my point. What I was trying to explain here. And if yes, then let's go and move to our part 2, that is we are going to create one more contract, that is global variables. So yes, global variables. Okay, so global variables are actually nothing but they are the predefined variables already. And to create the global variables, uh, I'm just showing you how the global variables look like. And let's see, dx dx fire mighty sigma solidity 0.8.0. It is just, I can also use 0.8.7. Let's create a contract and define our first global variable, which we can also take help from here, and we can write anything from here. Let's take block.coinbase, and it is of the type address. So we want to give it address and give it public, and we're going to give it any name block test, and it is going to take the value what block.coinbase block.coinbase. Okay, I've been given any name. Let's give it a name, global variables. And yeah, let's come here and it is already compiled, and let's deploy it. And after deploying it, when we come and when we click on block test, we see the address of the contract that has mined this block. So these are these are the stuff that uh, global variables do. Like we can also write one more. Let's write address public name is equal to message dot sender. So what is going to do is it is going to give the name of the address it is being called with. Now we are going to call it from this address. Let's write this address here. We have copied this address. We're going to call it from this address, and let's check the name, and you can compare it. It is displaying the same name. So yeah, that's pretty much about this, and that completes our part of the global variable as well. So yeah, uh, let's see that if we want to check one more of them, or we can also end this, or maybe we can give it as a homework to go and check all of these global variables and see what each of them outputs. So I mean it's better for you to understand and learn. So yeah, that's it for today's webinar. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Hemang, the professor of NFT development.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, for those who missed the previous lesson, so this is actually part two. So if in case you missed out, I'll be uploading some of the pending recordings that for the previous lessons that we have. All right. So any questions so far, guys, with regards to today's lesson? This is Solidity Programming Lesson Part 2. So anyone here who, who's really interested in having a career in blockchain development, NFT development, it's just a really nice and rewarding and in demand career actually right now.
Mhm. and I can also do one more thing. I'll provide you all with the code access. So if you guys have been following it, and if you also want to check it after this webinar end, then you can also check it on your end. So that will also help you. I mean, upscale your skills in this.
So maybe a question like for me, if example. So Hemang, if example, I'm a total rookie, So but then, yeah, since here in TokenMinds Academy, we're saying that this is really nice career, etc. So of course, at the first time you have this lesson, so some people may see it like really overwhelming since they are not yet familiar with coding, etc. So what what can you suggest? Like, okay, if I'm starting, so which resources, which sites should I review, to prepare myself for this kind of career actually. So of course, in the lesson, I cannot absorb really 100% of what's being taught, right? So they may be utilizing our recordings once they already read some and really somehow had this basic understanding. So, which sites or resources, additional resources, could you suggest to them, just in case
Yeah,
if they are really
yeah,
interested in this one?
yeah, sure, sure. So I'll just give one of the resource link right here in the chat box, and it is actually a great one
Oh, wait,
because
let me post it because we have an anti-bot,
yeah, okay, okay. So actually,
Yeah,
it is one of the great posts if you want to start
that,
from the beginning. So
yeah.
like
So I'll send it, guys. Sorry because my bot is so strict. All right.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's one of the thing that if someone likes to understand by reading, like there are two kinds of people who likes to understand by reading, and one likes to see by the YouTube videos. So someone who wants to go by reading, then it is one of the greatest source to cover because it covers everything from the basic. So yeah, that's one of the stuff. And for the YouTube portion, I'm fetching out the name of the guy right now. So it is by the name Smart Contract Programmer, and
Maybe
it is a
send to me. Yeah, so I can post.
yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Just a second. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
just to share to everyone. Yeah. So because like for me, example, if example, I see that this is really in demand, especially when Aptos was launched. Actually, I'm seeing a lot of job openings for Aptos developers or something like that. You know. So this is different blockchain, but this is kind of relevant as well. Right?
mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
as long as there are new blockchain, new technologies, since we are still in the early phase of Web3, I really believe that this will be there will be more demand in the future as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like what people say is that we are just scratching the surface right now, and with all these bear market thing, actually I see that some of the trends have gone a little low because of the bear markets. But these bear markets are the thing, are the time where the real development starts. So I believe that we are just on the surface of it, and like if you ask anyone 3 or 4 years ago, they wouldn't have known anything about Solana blockchain. Now people are developing on Solana blockchain as well. What we are doing here is we are doing on the Ethereum. So as the time is growing, there are several other things and tools, and especially the tools, they are coming day after day, which are really very fast and helpful for the programming and all, and especially the development process. So yeah, it's going to be a boost.
Yeah, so I really believe in this as well. Actually, one of my nephew, I recommended him to take an IT course and then go straight ahead with a blockchain development career right after.
Yeah, yeah, it's a
This
great
is
career. Like
yeah,
if you
this
see
is
me
really
also,
in demand.
well, I'm still in school, but when I also started doing this, I was also in school at that time also, but now I'm kind of the only guy in my whole batch who knows things about Solidity and blockchain development. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it is really cool to understand because it gives also you an edge amongst your colleagues and acquaintances that you know some stuff that is giving you pretty high value in return, and also just not about the money part. It is also interesting to see how we are going from the centralized world to a decentralized world. So yeah.
And also, for me, if example, you have the basic idea, or in general, you have the idea of how to develop. Maybe you can, because you know the mechanics of different blockchain. Maybe you can even build your own, right? So there are endless possibilities actually.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also a very great thing that you can also build your own blockchain. Like, see, most of the people only know about one kind of blockchain, that is public blockchain. There's also other like private and hybrid. So these blockchains are also too much in use. For example, if you are a if you're in a big organization and you want to transfer all your things to a blockchain, then you won't be doing that on a public blockchain, right? You'll be doing that on a private one. And imagine you being the one developing that. So it's going to be an awesome thing. Yeah.
Something. So actually, it's great time to learn these skills at the moment because it's the bear market. So it's time to build. It's time to hone your skills, your knowledge.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just tip guys, if of course I know that everything is hard to absorb just with one sitting or two sitting in a webinar. Yeah. So we're sharing here some links for you, self study, for example, as a start. As you can see, Hemang, he states that he's still a student, but he's already mastered somehow this
Mhm.
blockchain, and he's one of our blockchain developers actually.
Yeah, yeah.
So everything is possible, guys.
Yes, everything is possible. You just need to be consistent enough, and I mean, it is relatively easier than other languages. It is high level language. I've explained it on in the first webinar, which is actually more closer to human than to machine. So it is basically English. So what I was writing there was actually not actually English, but if you try to read and remove the terms that are used in computer language, you will understand that it is mostly English. So it is easier to learn. So yeah, I think you should.
Questions, guys, before we end this session, or if you're shy, you can just add Hemang and send some questions to him. Like, okay, how can I? So if you're trying out both of your as well, yourself, you can
Absolutely.
always ask him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions, guys, before we end this session? Okay, so if none, yeah, we will be ending the session. Thank you very much, Hemang.
Okay.
And I will be uploading the previous lessons. All right, so because some people have already been requesting. Yeah. And in case you missed, guys, so we have a really interesting feature. So in the Token Minds podcast, so we have actually interviewed one of the big names or blue chip projects in Web3 NFT. So that's World of Women. So we had an interview with the director of communications, Adelina. So if in case you've missed that, okay, it's posted here in the TokenMinds podcast. Uh, so it's really interesting interview. Okay, so yeah, thank you guys for joining today's lesson. So we will be announcing as well the lessons for next week. All right. So thank you and have a nice day. Bye bye.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.